No, one thing that I always think about is like when I was younger, I wish I would have failed faster. It's better to try and fail than to not try at all. It'd be much worse if you just sit there and let time go by, and then you will regret that even more.
Welcome to Spur Equity's Spur Your Wealth podcast, your ultimate guide to passive income through real estate investing. Join us as we together discover the secrets of building wealth, one passive investment at a time.
From expert insights to inspiring success stories, this podcast will inspire you and empower you to take control of your family's financial future so you can live life on your own terms.
All right, welcome to another episode of Spur Equity's Spur Your Wealth podcast. We are your hosts, Param Singh
and Rav Singh.
So on the Spur Your Wealth podcast, we aim to have successful investors and experts on our podcast to share their stories and secrets in investing so we can all stand to benefit from their experience. So we're in for a real treat today as we have on our show today our featured guest, Scott Kidd from Yachty Real Estate Investors. Scott has been a yacht captain for over 20 years, but has been investing in real estate, multifamily real estate, for the past 4 years, and he's built a business around it to allow folks within his own network to invest in multifamily projects as well. So welcome, Scott. So happy to have you on Spur Your Wealth.
Hey, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate being here with you guys today.
Great. So Scott is a fellow Raise Master. We're part of the same mastermind. So I know a little bit about Scott's background. But Scott, would you mind telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and your background as a yacht captain, and then how you ventured into real estate investing?
I was in the IT world for a little while, and I got laid off, and I lost my business that year, and I was back in Jamaica. And a friend of a friend asked me if I wanted to work on a boat, and asked me if I knew anything about that. And I said, no, I don't know anything about working on a boat, but I'm game. I'll give it a shot. And so I borrowed the money for the airline ticket and borrowed some cash to get me there. And I spent a lot of the money at the airport and everything else. I landed in Fort Lauderdale with $20 in my pocket, and I didn't really know anybody, but I started working on the boat, and I never looked back. It's one of my passions. I love working on boats. It's being on the water is very peaceful and great for me, and it led me to real estate as well, because I like a lot of people. I started out. I got married. We bought our first house, and then our family got bigger, so we bought another house and rented that one. And then eventually sold that one and bought another house. And it was just interesting. One time I was talking to a friend of a friend, and he said he did real estate. And he said that he had bought and sold a 46 unit in Texas. And he'd made a large sum of money. And I said, well, how did you do that? He said, well, I did. It's not that much more difficult than single family house. I did it, so you can too. It's not as difficult as you might think. So I started doing the research, and it took me a little bit. Went through a little bit of analysis paralysis, but I started going to meetups and everything else, and I eventually met a partner of mine, and we invested in a 13 unit and bought and sold an 88 unit, and started investing in some LP syndications, and I currently am co-GP on a couple of syndications and a member of Raise Masters as well, which I really enjoy. I wish I would have joined sooner, but it's a great group of people.
Scott, I love your story, what you just talked about, your journey, your background, how you got to the States, and Param and I talk about this all the time, that they're folks who who have big dreams and who have big opportunity, but they don't take the leap of faith, right? Something comes up, and the brain doesn't let them execute. And so, you got to the States with $20 in your pocket, and you made it happen, right? So congrats to you. That's a really big success story, which I think we all sort of take it for granted. And not only that, right? I mean, you took it from there, started investing, and really started learning and making that as a foundation, started networking. Now you're part of Raise Masters. And once again, we meet a lot of people. I meet a lot of people through my brokerage business. And, I see investors, I see agents who basically keep saying to us that I wish, right? And they just don't act on it. And so, that's something I wanted to kind of unpack here for you and for our listeners, is the fact that, sometimes you kind of have to go with your gut. Sometimes you got to have your nose kind of lead the way. And things happen, right? Things happen in the right direction because the universe makes it happen for you, right? The universe kind of conspires to make that happen for you, as one of that books that I read the other day said. So congrats on that, and on all your success. One thing I was going to ask you that I heard from your conversation was the fact that as a limited partner, we were talking earlier that you are investing as a limited partner. Tell us a little bit about that. How does that happen? Are you investing yourself, or do you have investors? And if you do, who are they, or where are they coming from? Do you have a specific avatar that you follow, or that you get your investors from? Kind of let us know a little bit about that.
Well, I kind of have a mix of three different things. I have smaller joint ventures for the smaller multifamily stuff. I'm co-GP on some syndications where the start of my investor pool was a lot of people in yachts that work on yachts. They basically live on the boat, and they have a lot of cash sitting there. And they, like myself, 5-10 years ago, I didn't know that a lot of these opportunities were here, and they're actually a lot more stable than a lot of other investments that you could make. And I also invest in limited partner syndications as well with people that I know, because and my kind of guideline is I want to get a few of these every year, and they'll all each feed itself, and that way eventually I can have the choice of whether maybe I want to continue working on the yachts, which I probably won't. I love real estate and yachts, so I'll probably do both until they tell me I can't. So but right now I work 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off on the boats. So I tell people I do 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off on the boats, and then 365 days a year I do real estate.
That's great. Yeah. Scott, you had mentioned to me in another conversation around the same concept, like getting started, right? A lot of our investors, a lot of our listeners are like, how do I get started? And you had mentioned to me about a mentor, right? That you joined another group, and there was a mentor that, you were pretty excited about getting, I want to be a GP, but he gave you some different advice. Can you talk to me about that and how that's been kind of framing your journey?
Well, I've been looking at a lot of LP limited partner syndications, and just to get in, and my goal was to be a GP, and I'd probably talked to at least 10 syndicators, and he resonated with me because the conversations weren't really about the deal or anything like that. He more asked the questions like, well, what do you want to, what are you trying to accomplish here? What are you trying to do? And he suggested to me, he's like, well, you're working full time on these boats, and you go here, there, and everywhere. And being a GP on these projects, it's a full-time job. It's another job. And you have to make sure that you have the time for that. And you have to think also, as the limited partner, you get the lion's share of the profits, and you are hands off. You don't have to really do much of anything other than collect the quarterly distributions or monthly distributions and look at the reports. Granted, it's a hurdle to overcome for some people to give up that level of control, but there's a lot of people that have money in their Roth and their 401ks and stuff, and I've asked them, well, what do any of these companies do? And they say, I don't know, but my advisor told me to put it in there. Yeah. So do you know what the returns were. Not really.
Yeah.
But but this, I think you have a lot more control over, because it's easier to understand for me that you're investing in one property, and you can it's more simple than, you know, multiple company, you know, a global conglomerate with multiple CEOs, you know, worldwide. That's anybody's guess where that's going to go.
And really, I mean, this really resonates with what Param and I also look at at Spur Equity, where we've recently kind of shifted our strategy in the last year or so, where we're basically lifestyle investors. You know, we want to be lifestyle investors. We want to enjoy doing what we do. At the end of the day, we also want to make money for us and our families and our investors, right? And so being an LP investor lets you do that. Being an LP investor lets you have that freedom, as long as obviously, you know, we're studying the sponsor. We're making sure that the sponsor that we're doing, we're vetting the sponsor, making sure that they have the track record, they have the experience, they have the knowledge, they have the network and all that, right? I mean, all that is obviously given, and that's what you're probably doing, and that's what we're doing before we're saying, now let's put our money into that deal itself, right? The person comes first. And so, and I loved your example of what you talked about, you know, people who are in mutual funds and in stock markets. Well, at the end of the day, they don't really know those companies. They don't really know the people behind it, and yet they're putting their money. But yet it's a hurdle for us to go and say, look, you know, here's the deal that we're doing, and this is the track record. But still, I think it's real estate to a lot of people is still very new. It's still something that's just, you know, sort of out there. And until they see you do it, until they see you here, and really see the examples that you're following, and so it becomes a long-winded sort of approach. But one day people will just come to you and say, look, I've been following you for the last 5 years. I am ready because I'm seeing your success.
Yes, and that's starting to happen. Like you said, as a lifestyle investor, one of my sayings is like how to achieve your yachty lifestyle by investing in multifamily apartments. And that's something that, because people can equate, you know, they don't really know too much about what it takes to work on a yacht, but they understand what a yacht is and what the lifestyle is.
Right.
And if you can put the two together, that, you know, the multifamily apartments can make that happen. And everyone's lifestyle is relative to them, you know, like everyone's happiness is different, and everyone's risk profile is different as well. So, you know, it's really, for what it came down to me a few years ago, was just taking my time back. Yeah. You know, is where I can do what I choose, do what I choose, you know, and that, you know, starting my own businesses and stuff like that. I got a lot of that from my parents, that, you know, what they had businesses in Texas and Jamaica, and it was, you could do it. There's always a chance. You just have to go and do it. You know, you're going to fail a bunch of times, but you can always get back up and do it again. That's what's great about America, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that resonates with me. That's kind of, you know, our parents, my father came to America, you know, 40 plus years ago with $100 in his pocket, right? And there was no option but to succeed, right? Because you got to provide for your family. And so that work ethic, you know, is kind of instilled in us. And, you know, Rav and I have the same thing, that no matter what we do, it doesn't matter, right? Like, we'll be successful. Yeah, we'll make mistakes along the way if we don't know the, you know the atmosphere or whatever. But you know, we'll figure it out. And that's kind of you know, how Spur Equity came to be. You know, Rav and I have been talking about kind of doing things together and investing together for a number of years, and we failed a couple of times, actually. Like back in 2005, 2006, we started something, and you know, it didn't really pan out. But then, you know, we came back to the table and said, hey, let's try something different. And so, again, we had a little bit of a balance about you know, you talk about analysis paralysis. Like, I'm an analytical guy. I, you know, run the spreadsheets and everything. I need some information before I get started. But, you know, Rav's, I love his attitude. He's like, we'll figure it out. And let's just jump in. Let's dive in. Don't look. He's like, jump in without looking. But, you know, that balance actually led us to spearhead, to accelerate that journey. So I give props to Rav to be like, hey, that's great. We can learn all day long. But unless we do it, we're never going to know. And so we jumped in and started doing it. And so that kind of attitude, and you know, you learn along the way. you make mistakes, but you learn so much more from mistakes than you do just by learning and not actually doing anything. So big props to Rav on that for pushing it forward.
Param, as you always say, fail
forward. Exactly.
No, one thing that I always think about is like when I was younger, I wish I would have failed faster.
Absolutely. I like that. I don't know. I'm gonna steal that too.
Yeah, no, take it. I'm sure I heard it from somebody else. So it's a great thing, like we were discussing before. Done is better than perfect. Just get it. Like I used to build websites, and I remember go back and forth a whole bunch of times with the customer, and they no, I don't want to release it yet because and I was like, well, but every day that it's not out as a beta version, you're not making money. So we can do this along the way. And then I had to rethink my advice I gave to them when I was redoing mine, like, oh, I shouldn't put it out yet. So I was like, well, done is better than perfect. Let's just get it out there. And if it's terrible, people will tell you it's terrible, and then I'll just fix it.
No, I love that attitude, right? And that's the positive attitude that we were talking about, that you have to have that sort of focus in life and that attitude in life, where otherwise, you'll just sit there and nothing gets done. We talk about to our kids like that all the time. Scott, tell us a little bit about your journey. So you started purchasing, and you found a partner, and you started purchasing with your partner. That's great. What, from a focus standpoint, talk to us regarding, what are you doing today, and what does your next 2-3 years look like, from an investing, from a underwriting, from a getting to know people, from a networking, just, where are you headed?
Well, maybe a little bit later in last year, maybe around October, since I was doing quite a few things, especially with the smaller multifamily and stuff, and I was still looking at syndications and stuff like that, and I'd put some more money into some other LP syndications, and I still wanted to be a GP, but I said, well, if I'm going to do that, I can't continue to analyze the deal, do this, try to do everything, because like we were discussing before, it's a team effort. So I decided to focus on basically the capital stack, which is, investor relations, raising capital, maybe bringing in some of the finance, preferred equity, stuff like that, to where I can help the deal. That's where I can add value to the team, because in the multifamily space, just like on the boats, it's a team effort. Without a team, the property goes nowhere. Without the team, the boat goes nowhere. You have to have a good team. And so over the next few years, I'm focusing on that and working on building out a fund. Probably target date is sometime around the end of the year, beginning of the year, to start that for multifamily and some other investments as well. We're looking at e-commerce as well, but mainly to provide value to a lot of the people that didn't know that these things were available, because I didn't know certainly didn't know they were available. And whether or not they invest with me or other people I know, that's fine. I just want them to know that it's there, because for me, a life not lived is worse than me not trying, because if there's that story I read of David Goggins where he gets to heaven and God reads all these great accomplishments that came out, and he said, oh, well, that's not me. He said, no, that's who you were supposed to be.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And I love that. I love that story, because it's like if I lived a life doing the same things over and over again and didn't at least try to be who that person needed to be, then that would be much more torturous than trying and failing.
Yeah, I mean
we always say.
Sorry, I was going to say that resonates with us quite a bit, because same thing. Like, we look at it from our perspective. Like, I wish somebody had told me about this avenue 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So we take, one of the reasons for this podcast is so that we can get this information out there in our community, in our network, and make sure that, they don't face the same hurdles that we did in starting. And that's the other thing you mentioned. about this industry, real estate, is that, everyone is so giving, right? There's so many opportunities for partnership and everybody wants to see the other person succeed. There's not a whole lot it's a healthy balance of competition and collaboration in the sense that, everyone wants to kind of work together, right? Because we can accomplish way more together. And, somebody who has a little bit of money to invest, the first thought to their mind is like, let me go buy a small single family home, right? Because that's my reach. But when we do things together, when we leverage and leverage is a big thing, right? When we talk about finances and loans, allowing us to purchase bigger, but also leverage somebody else's expertise. So as you said, like, if I'm working full time, I don't have everything in it to me to learn everything about underwriting, about insurance, about property management, about asset management. I don't have that time to do that, to get expertise. So why don't I pull people with that expertise together, and so we can tackle something together? So I think that's huge in this business, and that's been the reason for our success as well, is partnership. I mentioned this a lot, but in our language, in Punjabi, we have this saying that says, translates to 1 and 1 is not necessarily 2. It could be 11. Because when you stand together, you're actually more than just the two of you, combined. And so that partnership is really where, acceleration happens, I think.
Yeah. So social leverage, it's kind of exponential, because if you leverage a group and leverage people, it's really limitless, because, in that group, you might have everything you need and then some. Because you might be exposed to things that you never even thought of, and that's what I've learned over and over again, just being around people that are in this space and are just entrepreneurs and are very positive people that always come with solutions. Because that's what I teach a lot of the guys on the boats is, when they come and there's this problem, then it's like, well, first off, there's always problems, but next time, before you come here, think about it, try something, and if you can't figure it out, then come back or come back and tell me, hey, I fixed this. Yeah. This is how I did it. Yeah. And then usually it's much more rewarding for them. They're like, hey, look what I did. And it's like, okay. Uh-huh. But then if you can't figure it out, we'll go take a look at it together, and if none of us can figure it out, we'll get somebody.
Yeah. Definitely a life by design, not by default, right?
Yes.
Something that you're actively pursuing and actively doing, and seems like you are, especially on the yacht, you are helping your fellow folks who are working there achieve more by actually giving them the power to do right. And then if they can, then they can always come to you. And so I think that's great. Give us one advice. Give us advice that you give to your kids or to your investors. What would that be?
Well, one thing that the advice that I would give them is it's better to try and fail than to not try at all. It'd be much worse if you just sit there and let time go by, and then you will regret that even more. They say when people are older, one of the questions that's always answered, they say, what did you regret? And they say more than likely they always regretted things that they didn't do.
Yeah.
And no one ever had on their tombstone, I wish I would have worked more.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's great advice, right? Keep trying, because there's never a perfect time. There's never a perfect way, right? You learn. And I took a class back in my college days. I remember still, it was a creative thinking class. And the norm is that something about that, if it ain't broke, just leave it alone. Yeah. And my professor comes in and he says, if it ain't broke, break it. Find a new way to fix it.
Break it, yeah.
And that's paradigm shift right there, right? Thinking, what's he talking about? He's like, learn that was just a convention that somebody said this works, and let it be that way. But who's to know there's a better way, right? Who's to know there's not another way? So there's nothing that's perfect. You can make it perfect to the way you want to make it. And so I love that about investing also, where it's not about just investing in multifamily or, investing in hotels or whatever works for you, go for it, right? And while you're doing it, you're learning it, you're working with people, your strategy may change a little bit, and that's okay. Adapt while you're doing it. And that's where the learning comes in.
I was just going to piggyback off that, just because our own strategy at Spur Equity, we've changed multiple times, right? So like when Rav and I started, we were investing in our own money in like small 16 unit properties. And very, very quickly we figured out, I don't want to be a property manager. That's not my calling, right? I don't want to be the one fixing toilets and getting the calls and all that stuff, right? And so we moved on to bigger things, and we did syndications. And, when you do that, you will quickly find out, where your strengths lie and where you can pull in other people. And we've changed our strategy quite a bit. There's things that we actively manage ourselves. But as Rav said, the same advice that we give to our investors, we ultimately want to be a lifestyle investor, right? So right now we're managing and doing things very, very actively, but we want to be more and more and more and more passive in our investing. And so we're changing our trajectory as a business as well. And so, everything, if we're trying to find new ways, as Rav said, we didn't break it, but we're trying better ways of how this can work for us and our family as well. And giving that same advice to our investors who are like, we have full-time physicians that are like, hey, should I go buy 2 Airbnbs? And I'm like, do you have the time to manage? I mean, you're a full-time physician. Do you have time to do this? Because it's going to take time. You may make money, but it's, think about the time that you have to spend. So just trying to give new solutions, better solutions to the problems that people bring to us, and as far as like what they want to do for their, real estate portfolio.
Well, and that resonates with me as well, because I've given that advice of, the Airbnb, like people tell me, I want to go buy a crew house for yacht crew and do that. And I'd say, well, wait a minute, you're gone 9 months out of the year on this boat. Do you have somebody to manage that for you? And do you want another job?
Yeah.
Because it's a full-time job. Even if you have a manager there, you have to manage the manager. You still have to do that. And I've done some things where I've compared to some of my LP investments to some of my other smaller real estate stuff where I was very active involved. If I counted my time in there, even though the LP syndication, the returns were still even higher. They're 18-20%, and some of the the smaller joint venture stuff that I did, if I put my time in there, it was probably only about 12%. So my time was not as effective as if I just put it in there, and then the velocity of capital is faster, because then when it turns over, I can put it into more things. It regenerates itself much faster. But you don't know what you don't know, so you have to constantly be learning and growing. My goals when I first started, like I said, was one house a year, and I didn't didn't realize that I could just buy that all in one go.
I love that.
If I just brought in some other partners and some other people, we could, like you said, together we can do a multitude of things. It's exponential.
Absolutely.
I like
that you need.
I like the 1 and 1 is 11. I'm going to take that.
Feel free.
I like that one. 1 and 1 is.
Hey, so I know we're running on time here, so I just wanted to see if there's and this has been really insightful, by the way, because when things resonate so quickly and so evenly, like with what we're given to our investors and what we've been experiencing. Your story definitely resonates with us, and I'm sure it resonates with a lot of our listeners. So as a final thought, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners, maybe a valuable a resource that has helped you along the way, or an upcoming project, or something that gets you excited about the future of real estate investing, right? As we're looking at, kind of a changing economy, like what gets you excited about investing? So if there's any last things that you want to share with our listeners, that'd be great. Well,
one thing that has basically 10x my life and stuff is just the networking. And one thing that I've always been good at is connecting with people and talking with people. And, you don't know what you don't know. So just get out there and meet more people and surround yourself with people that are like-minded, or maybe have something that you've never thought about, because that'll get the creative juices going, and you'll meet people that are doing some amazing things. If you just get out there and just keep going and trying, and just keep going, because it won't happen overnight. Just keep meeting more people, and I that's what I truly love, is just getting out and meeting people and helping people. And life is what you give, not what you get.
Yeah,
so
great.
You give more so that you can be more. And when you're more, you can give more, and then you can be more. So it just keeps going. So that's the only thing that I would say to everyone else, is just get out there and get going and just meet more people.
That's great. Thank you, Scott. So that's all the time we have for today's episode. Scott, I want to really thank you for sharing your story. It's truly inspiring, right, to see what you have done by not only educating yourself, but also taking action, right? So congratulations on your success, and wish you much more success. For listeners, thank you for tuning into this episode of Spur Equity's Spur Your Wealth podcast. Again, we are Param Singh and Rav Singh from Spur Equity. Remember, your journey to financial freedom begins with knowledge and action. Where knowledge is power,
but action is superpower. So until next time, happy investing.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Spur Your Wealth podcast. We hope you enjoyed the valuable insights and inspiration. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and stay updated on future episodes filled with actionable tips and strategies.
if you want more information about our investment projects, visit us at spurequity.com. If you have an inspiring story to share and would like to be a guest on our podcast, email us at podcast@spurequity.com. Until next time, happy investing.